Lesson 9, Roles and Responsibilities, Part 1, SIAM Layers. Welcome to Lesson 9. In this lesson, we'll begin our studies of SIAM roles and responsibilities. We'll look at how roles are different in a SIAM environment, the role of the customer, the service integrator, and the service providers. Clear roles and responsibilities are essential in any organization. A role is defined as the position or purpose that someone or something has in a situation, organization, society, or relationship. A responsibility is defined as something that is your job or duty to deal with. Roles and responsibilities in a SIAM context tell each organization and stakeholder who they are and what they need to do. For example, at Ceylon Ordnance, NetCorp's role is to be the network service provider, and their responsibility is to provide and maintain the network to meet the agreed service levels. Without clear roles and responsibilities, tasks may be missed or duplicated, and stakeholders can unknowingly exceed the boundaries of their authority. There are four main activities associated with roles and responsibilities in a SIAM context. Definition of principles and policies takes place during the discovery and strategy roadmap stage. Here, the customer organization starts to make decisions about what roles it wants to maintain internally and what it will source externally. Design happens during plan and build. Detailed roles and responsibilities are developed based on the decision made during discovery and strategy. Allocation of roles takes place during the implement roadmap stage. Each SIAM model will be different, but there are some roles that are fixed. The customer organization must always retain any roles that are a legislative or regulatory requirement. The service integrator will always be accountable for service governance, management, integration, assurance, and coordination, and the service providers will always fulfill the service delivery roles. Finally, monitoring and improvement checks that the roles in place are effective and highlights any areas where improvements can be made. If there is a change to the SIAM model, the affected roles and responsibilities need to be reviewed to make sure they are still appropriate. Roles and responsibilities exist in every organization, but here we are looking at them specifically in a SIAM environment. So we must ask ourselves, how is a role different in a SIAM ecosystem? When mapping roles and responsibilities in a SIAM ecosystem, it's important to remember that one process or activity can span the layers of the SIAM ecosystem. One person can perform multiple roles. For example, during a major incident, the process activities could include service provider staff investigating possible causes, the service integrator coordinating the response, and the customer providing information about business impact. All of these roles need to be mapped. A process manager working within a service provider might have multiple roles, including attending the change advisory board, creating knowledge articles for knowledge management, and creating reports as part of service level management. Let's think a bit more about the impact of a SIAM environment on roles and responsibilities. Plan to spend 20 minutes on this exercise, and don't forget to review our suggested solution. Earlier in the course, we looked at the SIAM layers. Use the Ceylon Ordnance case study to help you here if you wish. How will adopting SIAM change the role of the customer organization, the customer's retained capabilities, the service integrator, the service providers? For example, the customer organization will need to understand that it doesn't have a direct relationship with the service providers anymore. Instead, it needs to work with the service integrator. For the remainder of this lesson, we're going to look at the SIAM layer roles in more detail: the customer, the service integrator, and the service providers. We'll cover some high-level information in the video lesson and add some detailed tables to your study guide, which you will also need to review carefully. Let's start with the role of the customer organization. You can see the definition here. The customer's role within the SIAM ecosystem is that of the commissioning organization. It also includes the retained capabilities that carry out corporate governance of the SIAM ecosystem. The customer owns the contractual relationship with the service provider and with the service integrator, if it is an external service integrator. The customer empowers the service integrator to act as their agent. You can see some examples of the customer organization's accountabilities here. Although the service integrator is coordinating the end-to-end service on their behalf, the customer must still set the overall strategic direction. They set policies, carry out financial and contractual management of the external organizations in the SIAM ecosystem, and retain accountability for corporate risk management. The service integrator might support the customer organization in some of these areas. For example, while the customer is accountable for contract management, the service integrator might provide some of the information that helps the customer to carry out contract management effectively. There are some example roles shown on screen here that would be part of the customer organization. These are not a complete list, and it's important to remember that many organizations have different labels for the same role. For example, the head of IT may be referred to as the Chief Information Officer or the Chief Technical Officer. The labels aren't important. Making sure there are clear roles and responsibilities is. The service owner is accountable for the performance of a service. They will work with the service integrator to make sure that service requirements and key performance indicators are clear. The enterprise architect defines the organization's overall enterprise architecture, which will inform the work of the service integrator and service providers. Enterprise architecture is defined as a conceptual blueprint that defines the structure and operation of an organization. The intent of an enterprise architecture is to determine how an organization can most effectively achieve its current and future objectives. You will have noticed that the customer's role is to create the vision and the direction that drives the whole SIAM ecosystem. If the customer isn't clear about what they want, the service integrator won't have clear targets, and the service providers will be unsure about what they need to deliver. Responsibilities for the customer organization will include defining policies, standards, procedures, and guidelines, developing and owning the IT strategy, providing overarching program and commercial management, governance of the service integrator, ownership of business relationships, budget definition and control. The next role we'll study is the service integrator. The role is defined as where end-to-end service governance, integration, assurance, and coordination are performed. Remember, this could be an external organization, or it could be part of the customer organization. Whether it is sourced internally or externally, the service integrator is viewed and managed as a discrete logical entity. You can see some of the accountabilities of the service integrator here. They include end-to-end service management, end-to-end performance management, end-to-end service reporting, service governance and assurance, tracking value for money, continual service improvement. All of the service integrator's roles and responsibilities are about integration and management, not actually carrying out the activities. The service providers each deliver their own service or service element. The service integrator's role is to bring it all together. Here, you can see some common role titles for staff within the service integrator. As with the customer organization, this isn't an exhaustive list, and different organizations will use different terms to refer to the same roles. The process owner role within the service integrator will integrate processes across service providers. This is different to a process owner role outside a SIAM ecosystem, which is only responsible for its own process with no integration element. The responsibilities of a service integrator include end-to-end service management across service providers, acting as the customer's agent, managing end-to-end performance management across service providers, consolidated service reporting, managing service provider performance against contractual and service targets. The service integrator might also be responsible for the provision and management of an integrated service management toolset. We'll add a complete list of responsibilities to your study guide. Don't forget, the service integrator may be managing both internal and external service providers. Finally, in this lesson, we'll take a look at the role of the service provider. This is defined as you can see here. Within a SIAM ecosystem, there are multiple service providers. Each service provider is responsible for the delivery of one or more services or service elements to the customer. It is responsible for managing the products and technology used to deliver its contracted or agreed services. The service providers can be part of the customer organization or external to it. External service providers are not a new concept. The requirement for them to collaborate as part of a SIAM model is a more recent development. Here, you can see the typical accountabilities of a service provider. The required behaviors will be described in contracts for external service providers and targets for internal service providers. Working collaboratively can be a big cultural change for service providers, particularly if they are working with organizations that they view as competitors. The customer organization can, however, benefit from competitive tension between service providers as they each try and demonstrate their strengths. Here, you can see some examples of service provider roles. Some service provider staff will be wholly dedicated to the service they provide to a particular SIAM model. For example, at Ceylon Ordnance, NetCorp might have dedicated staff for the Ceylon Ordnance contract. Other staff will be shared resources, working on multiple contracts. The service provider needs to plan appropriately so that it has the right staff with the right skills in place for each contract, while still maintaining profitability. Here you can see some of the service provider responsibilities. They will deliver the service they are responsible for to agreed cost and quality levels. They will integrate their processes with the end-to-end service management processes based on guidance from the service integrator. They will adhere to any policies or standards that are in place and collaborate and engage with any meetings or forums that the service integrator puts in place. Click on the Next button to access your end-of-lesson quiz when you're ready. Here you can see some of the service provider responsibilities. You've completed Lesson 9. In this lesson, we've looked at how roles are different in a SIAM ecosystem and studied the SIAM layers: customer, service integrator, service provider. In the next lesson, we'll continue to study roles, including governance roles.